Do you remember the old Coke versus Pepsi thing? The Pepsi challenge? This was an advertising campaign back in the 70s, maybe the 80s, I don't really remember, where Pepsi set up blind taste tests against Coke in malls across the country, and a lot of people picked Pepsi as the winner. Pepsi used the stunt to go straight at their biggest competitor. If you're tactful and creative, you can take on your competitors head on. Today we're going to talk about 5 ways to go after your competitors in your marketing without coming off like a jerk. My name is Rich Harshaw. I'm the founder and CEO of Level 10 Contractor. We help remodeling and home services contractors generate 200 to 500 quotable leads a month reliably. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I wrote a book called Unlocking Unlimited Lead Flow, and I've helped hundreds of contractors break through the feast or famine cycles. If you're wanting leads on demand, you're in the right place. So let me give you a quick story here to get started. This goes way back to the mid-90s when I was just getting started in my career. I found a client that was called Scotch Plaid. Scotch Plaid was a car wash soap manufacturer of all things. So if you owned a car wash, you would buy your soaps from these guys, Scotch Plaid. Okay. I put together, as you can probably imagine, some pretty aggressive marketing, talking to their car wash customers about how their competitors' products were really, really bad for your car. These products, their competitors' products, would eat away the clear coats and cause rusting problems. Their major competitor was a company called Turtle Wax. Probably heard of them. Well, this company, Scotch Plaid, was a little teeny tiny company. I think they were somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, $2 or $3 million in revenue, and they were petrified to talk anything about Turtle Wax. They said, look, you can talk about how we perform against competitors, but you can't name them by name. And here's what they said, and I'll never forget this. They said, Turtle Wax can spend more per year on marketing to bury us than our top line revenue per year. And I thought, okay, fair point. We're going to tread lightly. We're going to take it easy. I think we snuck one in there that said something like, you'll be shell shocked by this, or some kind of a nod to Turtle. It was a little tip of the hat. But, you know, I've been kind of cognizant of this issue ever since then, that you can't necessarily go out, take a sledgehammer and just start beating the crap out of your competitors in your advertising, your marketing. So with that being said, let's figure out a way to be a little bit more subtle while we jab your opponents. Some of these are going to be a little bit more subtle than others. You decide. You can kind of put the needle where you want for your business. I'm going to encourage you to push the envelope as far as you feel comfortable in terms of competing directly against your competitors in your marketing. And legal disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. Ask your attorney before you do anything, especially stuff that might be stupid and get you in trouble. Now, let me say this. Never in any circumstances do we want to say anything about any competitor that is not absolutely verifiable and true. You don't want to be throwing opinions out there as fact, especially if it has the effect of making your competitor look bad. So that being said, let's go to the first way to tactfully market against your competitor. Here it is. Set a standard to compare against. Here, of course, I'm talking about your identity. Identity are words, phrases, and images articulated with power, precision, and passion that instantly and definitively communicate who you are, how you're better and different, what customers can expect when doing business with you. It's those things along 5 pillars. The 5 pillars, again, if you've heard me on other podcasts: products, workmanship, bedside manner, core values, and then culture and reputation. Okay, these are things that set you apart from the competition and also set the standards. So take a look at your identity and find where you excel in your company. Timeliness, communication, no pressure sales tactics, immaculate vans, whatever it is you do that makes you awesome, and then create a list of non-negotiable industry standards. Do not overcomplicate things. How long have you been in business? What kind of insurance do you have? What kind of materials do you use? Do you have rave reviews? You can talk about pricing, financing, warranties, whether or not you use subs, energy efficiency, again, anything and everywhere you excel. Here's what I want you to do though. I want you to think about an old magazine. I think it's still out there. It's in digital format. I'm not really sure. It's called Consumer Reports. Have you heard of this? Consumer Reports. Here's what they would do. They would say, all right, we're going to talk about maybe stereos in one issue. We're going to talk about luxury cars. We're going to talk about cameras. We're going to talk about refrigerators or whatever the product happened to be. Then the editors over at Consumer Reports, they would go out and they would create a set of standards and then measure all the products in that category against those particular standards. That would allow them to then cumulatively come up with a ranking for each of the competitors, and then they would give their recommendations based on the various different categories. Okay, so if you're looking for the longest lasting, we recommend this. If you're looking for one that has the most high-tech features, then we recommend this one. If you're looking for the one that brings the most value, the most bang for the buck, then here's the one that you're going to want. So I want you to do the same thing. I'm going to encourage you to start with your top 3 competitors. I'm going to be very, very specific here. I want you to be looking at the top 3 competitors that are the most well-known in the market. If you've got a well-known competitor that is competing in a different segment of the market, so let's say that you're doing what we would call more value-oriented vinyl windows. You don't have to go out there and compete against the Renewal by Andersons of the world. world, because that's a different category. What you want to do is go out and compete against the Window Worlds, the Window Nations, the Window Depots, those kinds of companies. Okay, you know what category you fit into. And look, this isn't a value judgment that vinyl windows are better or worse placed than higher end composite type windows. You do whatever you want to do. I don't really care. I just want to make sure that when you go out there, instead of comparing yourself against the 5 competitors that you seem to come up against, but they're not very well known in the marketplace, which is probably unlikely, I want you to look at the ones that have the biggest reputation that people have actually heard of, because those are the ones that people are generally going to be looking at. Makes sense. We're going to do some stuff with these companies here in a minute when we get to some of these other points. So it's important that you start with the right kind of comparisons. Start with 3 competitors. Ultimately, you want to get this to 5 and then 8 and then 10. I mean, I don't know if you have to go much further than that, but you got to start somewhere. So don't get overwhelmed with the number 10 for your report that you're going to put together. Just start with a manageable number. Start with 1 for crying out loud, then move to 2 and then 3. I'm going to give you some more specific ideas of how to do this as we go through this process. So the first thing though is to set a standard to compare against. The second way to, shall we say, artfully shade your competitors is by using price comparisons. Now you might be thinking, price comparisons? That doesn't sound a whole lot like level 10 kind of stuff. Why are you talking about price comparisons? Well, here's what I want you to remember. It always comes down to price. It doesn't mean that you have to be the lowest price or even lower than other competitors. It just means that conversation about who can afford what is coming, so you'd better be able to build a case for value. Okay? Here's what we want to do. We want to take those competitors that are sort of in your same range, like we just talked about, and we want to expose where they're weak by comparing them against our standards. Okay? That's what we just talked about. Then we want to show what the prices are for each of the competitors. So if your prices are higher and you can objectively say, look, based on these 7 things, whatever the categories are, that's why our prices are higher. And then people say, oh, I get that. People will pay for value. So how do we go about doing this? Building out a price comparison. First, you're going to need data. For that, here's what I recommend. Ask a friend or a family member, somebody that is not directly related to your company, to mystery shop all of your competitors. Now, I want you to check the local laws if it's legal. Hear me very carefully here. If it's legal, I want you to audio or video record the meetings. If it's not legal, then don't do that. Check with your attorney if you have to. You can use some of these softwares that salespeople use to record sales meetings if you want. I think there's 11 states or something like that require what's called 2-party consent, which means that if you're recording the other person that's in the conversation, i.e. the salesperson from your competitor, they need to be informed. So if you're in a 2-party state, this is not going to work. That means though that there's 39 states that do not require 2 parties, if my information is correct, and something you're going to have to check with your attorney. I don't want you to run afoul of the law. Not trying to get anybody busted here. Also, we're not necessarily doing anything with these recordings other than using them for our own benefit so that we can go back and review and see what people said. So we're not having you take your friend or family member's word for it when they say what happened. We want to be able to hear the recording. Okay? So we want to record these meetings if at all possible. Now, there could be some situations where if you wanted to get really, really aggressive, you could actually release some of these videos or audios. I mean, I probably don't recommend that because that's pretty darn aggressive, but I could probably find some situations where you might want to do that. But for most people, let's just stay away from that. But it would be useful if you've got a 2.5-hour sales presentation on tape, so to speak, as the company owner to be able to review all the details, run it through, some kind of orderly ChatGPT, get a summary of it, whatever, but check the laws. And then here's what you're going to do. You're going to have each company give you a quote on the project. You want to make sure that whatever the project is, that the specs are exactly the same. You want to be as true of an apples to apples comparison as possible. Get the quotes in writing on the company's letterhead or whatever, maybe they email it to you. It's not actually a letterhead. Have the branding thing that shows which company it's from, okay? Because this is something that you can publish. The pricing. Now, if you want to redact the company names because you don't feel like you need it, or you just don't want to go there, like Scotch Plaid in my example from earlier, that's okay. But at least you can have this and actually show this to prospects. Like here's the piece of paper, right? By the way, you can also gather a lot of the information for your industry report that I was talking about by drilling the salesperson for that information. And if you've got 10 different standards on your set of standards, remember you're going to create standards, and you can make sure you ask the salesperson about all those things in as much detail as makes sense, okay? So with this in hand, along with our standards, the pricing and the standards, then we can move on to number 3. You're going to actually create an industry analysis report. This is the consumer report style report. So in step 1, we create the standards. Step 2, we mystery shop your competitors. Step 3, we're actually going to create an analysis report that is going to present your case for being the best in the business. Think about how a court case works, okay? In a court case, if you're the prosecutor, you don't go in and just throw all the evidence out there and say, hey, here's everything that we found. You tailor the case, to make your case. You don't have to steer the case in directions that don't look good or flattering towards what you're trying to prove. Same thing goes in marketing. I encourage you to do this. Fairly judge each competitor against the standards and then quantify it. You're not trying to rip anybody a new butthole. You're not trying to lie and say that everybody else sucks when they don't. You're just reporting. Think about Consumer Reports. They didn't have an agenda. That's what made the magazine so popular and trustworthy. There was no bias. They didn't sell advertising, so they weren't beholden to their advertisers like other magazines. Everything was completely unbiased. Now, look, you're going to hear me and say that, well, but we are biased, but that's okay. We're not Consumer Reports. We're just trying to do this as close to the Consumer Reports type of model as we possibly can. We're trying to help gather information that your prospects actually need, okay? They actually need this information to make the best decision. We're just going to compile it and give it to them. That's what we're trying to do. Now, if you don't come out in first place, if you're not the company that you would recommend by your own standards, then you're going to need to be better. You've got to get better. So go fix the things where you're not doing well and then do the survey again. But assuming that you do come out in first place, which I hope to heavens you do, then you can publish the report on your website. This is going to be great for SEO because here's what's going to happen. And I'm going to get into this more on number 4 here in just a second. But the general concept is this. If your competitor's name shows up on this report, well, then Google is going to detect that when people are searching for your competitors' names. And this report will actually pop up in the search results. Also, before we move on to number 4, you can publish hard copies of this report. If it makes sense, you can hand them out at a sales meeting or home shows or wherever it makes sense to hand them out. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to competing with other contractors in your market? Drop a comment below. Let me know. I read every single one and I'd love to hear from you. All right, we're finally getting to where I've been heading this whole episode. Here it is. It's way number 4 to tactfully market against competitors. Do a one-on-one competitor analysis blog post. That's right, mano a mano. The information on your competitor should already be in your industry standard report. So here's what you do. Just write it up into a blog post using words, not charts, okay? Draw a conclusion. Here's the company's strengths. Here's the company's weaknesses. Here's your recommendations. Make sure, like I said earlier, that everything is accurate. It's really critical. Again, if you do this, think how powerful this is going to be. When people go to search for your competitor, Google sees that on your website, you have this page that is specifically dedicated to your competitor. It's going to pop up. People are going to find this when they're searching for your competitor. Assuming that you've done your homework and you've got good information, this is going to be really, really powerful. Even if you don't publish it on your website, your salesperson, your sales team, they can use this. They can pull things up in the sales meetings, leave the homeowners a copy and tell them to use it if they schedule a meeting with those other guys. Hands in the air, walk away. You're just trying to help them make the best decision possible when they buy this thing. There's no agenda here. Even if they choose the other guy, though we know they won't, especially if the homeowners are grilling them by your standards that you've set up, you can create a direct comparison report and post it on your website. It's healthy competition and the 4th way to put your competitors in the crosshairs. The last way today, number 5, is to actually use this report in advertising. You can be indirect. For instance, you've heard me on other podcast episodes. I showed a radio commercial called How Much Does It Weigh? I showed you an ad for fiberglass windows called Plastic. Okay. These are ads that I've written, successful ads, by the way, okay, that go directly after competitors, but not necessarily by name, but it goes after them pretty hard. If you want to go after them by name, again, that's up to you. I'm going to let you decide where you want to put the needle on this aggression mode. You can be direct or you can be indirect. It's completely up to you. Here's what you do want to do. Create a Google ad. Let's say that your company is called Superior Windows. I just made that name up. Superior Windows. So let's say you have a major competitor called Window Nation, which might be true for you, maybe not. So Superior Windows and Window Nation. Your report, your blog post, it's going to be about Window Nation, how they stack up in various things, like the materials of the windows, how long it takes to get them installed, how much pressure they put into the sales meeting, what kind of U values they have, window efficiency ratings, installer protocols, what kind of caulk they use, for crying out loud. You've heard me talk about all of that stuff before. All of these things are the standards that you're using to judge against. So now you put a little Google ad out there that says, how does Window Nation stack up to Superior Windows? People will see this. What's going to happen is people are going to go in and they're going to search Window Nation because they heard about it 1,000 times on the radio, maybe in your market, depends. And they're going to go, oh, Window Nation. So they're going to go over, they're going to see this ad that says, how does Window Nation stack up against Superior Windows? They're going to click on it. It's going to go to, oh yeah, your website. It's going to be a comparison about how Superior Windows, your company, is superior to Window Nation in this example. Obviously, you can do this with any competitor. You can do this with any kind of product. I'm just using Windows as this example right now. When people see this, okay, hopefully, if you do this enough, you do this long enough, then this page is going to start showing up organically. But for the time being, maybe just forever, because it's going to be worthwhile, just pay Google to put that ad up. Here's the great thing about that. You get to use the competitor's name, in this case, Window Nation. nation as a keyword that you're buying ads for, and you're not going to have to bid very much for those keywords compared to other keywords, replacement windows that are more generic and common, like I said, vinyl windows or something like that. But if you've got the keyword window nation, you're not going to have to pay very much to get that keyword, and it's going to show up first or second in the ads because literally nobody else is doing this. So you just pop up there. It'll be like the window nation ad if they're buying their own keywords, which they should be and you should be, and then your ad will show up there. So I recommend you look at this. It's a little bit like putting up your dukes and going to fight. I know that scares some of you, but let's take a cue from some other industries, okay? Now look, if you're finding this helpful, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so that you don't miss any of our future content. Click the bell icon to be notified the moment we release a new video. And remember, you can listen to me every single day on the Level 10 Contractor Daily Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or other podcast things, all right? I saw this little mention on Tim Ferriss's weekly email. It's called 5 Bullet Friday. It comes out every Friday, and I just look at it because I think Tim Ferriss is interesting. He's got this little section where he says, hey, here's some stuff you might want to buy. Well, one of those things was something called, I can't remember, it was either 8 Sleep or Sleep 8. I think it was 8 Sleep. It's a temperature regulation pad that you put on your mattress. And he had a little description on there. It said, hey, this is great. I've used it. It's awesome. You might want to check it out. So I click on this link, which takes me to the page for, again, I think it's 8 Sleep. This is good advertising. It's influencer marketing. I'm sure that Tim Ferriss is being paid to have that link on his weekly emails. So why wouldn't he? So I go to this page and I start reading about this 8 Sleep temperature regulation pad thingy that you put on your mattress, and it looks pretty good. And I'm thinking, hey, this seems like it might be something that, we could use at my house. This is something, my wife is always sleeping hot. Maybe this could help cool her down. And she sleeps at a different temperature. It's like the oldest story in the world. I know, but this is a product that maybe can help us out. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, wow, this is like really good. And the price looked pretty reasonable and it seemed like a pretty good deal. And I thought, well, this is something that's very interesting. I've heard about this thing, but I haven't really looked into it. So then I thought, this is this company's website, 8 Sleep. I wonder what the reviews are because you know how it is. I don't really trust what's on their webpage. I think it's going to be good information, but I want to get some confirmation. So I go back to Google and I type in 8 Sleep customer reviews. Okay. All of that is a long-winded way of saying I just wanted to look at their reviews. So I went and Googled 8 Sleep customer reviews and I hit enter. And when I hit enter, the very first thing that pops up is from one of their competitors, a company called BedJet. Now, BedJet is a product that I have looked at before because I'm aware that they have some really, really, really good marketing. You might want to check that out. They have an ad if you want to just amuse yourself. Go to YouTube and type in BedJet Devil and watch this commercial that they wrote. It's amazingly funny. It's effective. It's not the point here. Here is the point. This ad came up that said 8 Sleep Pod versus BedJet. More features, more powerful. And I thought, oh, interesting. Here's something that's telling me that it's better than this competitor. So I click on this ad. It's just a great web page. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the kind of stuff that I want you to create and that we will be creating for our SEO clients. Here's what it says. 8 Sleep Pod versus BedJet 3. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all the details because you're probably not interested in this, but here's what some of the headers say. Abuse test, water versus air, water leaks. You can clearly see that there's a video that's going to show you how this thing leaks. Here's what was interesting. What I thought was a page that was an ad was going to compare BedJet against 8 Sleep in favor of 8 Sleep is actually, yeah, that's right. It's by BedJet. And it starts talking about how it's better and it doesn't leak and how it makes you less humid and how it's got PVC that's stronger and better and easier to use and it looks better and all these different things. It's priced better. Here's customer reviews talking about the BedJet, how it has higher reviews. I mean, it really, really is good. The right cost, proven product, and yeah, it's not what I was expecting. It actually flipped me into thinking, oh geez, maybe I'll get this BedJet, instead of the 8 Sleep. Now guess what I found out later? 8 Sleep has their own page that compares against BedJet. I don't want to get into all the details. Here's what I want you to know. I want you to know this is a very important and practical way for you to conduct your marketing. And I think it's something that you should really lean into and look at. So for our conclusion here today, let me review what we've talked about. We've talked about 5 ways to tactfully market against your competitors. Number 1, setting the standard so you can compare. Number 2, compare the prices. Remember the mystery shopping thing? Number 3, create an industry analysis report, consumer report style. 4th, do a one-on-one competitor analysis blog post like I just talked about with BedJet versus the 8 Sleep thing. 5thly, finally, use the information in your advertising. So hopefully this is interesting and relevant to you. If you got any questions, this is one where maybe you've got some questions. Reach out to me. I encourage you to do it. Send me an email, rich, R-I-C-H, at level10contractor.com. Serious contractors want serious lead flow, 200 to 500 leads a month. It's not a dream. It's what we do here at Level 10 Contractor. Hit the link. Let's make it happen. I'll talk to you next time.